Hi, everyone. I'm Gillian Foster. I'm not at the Vienna University, but I'm at the Vienna University of Economics and Business, I would say, and I'm at the Institute for Ecological Economics. And I wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me to speak here at this really very interesting so far group. I will try to be quick and fit into the 10 minutes. I might struggle as everyone else has. Okay, so my topic today is thinking about cultural heritage and circularity in Europe. I was asked to do politics and policy, and so that's mostly what I'm focusing on. It's really, I hope, informative and to spur discussion. I want to tell you a bit about the EU project that I am working on now. It is called Circular Models Leveraging Investments in Cultural Heritage Adaptive Reuse. And so it is bringing circular economy and adaptive reuse of cultural heritage, I would say not limited to, but primarily buildings. Um, together. So let's try the clicker functions. So here are a few examples of buildings and structures that are reused. And circular economy is a production and consumption process. It requires minimum overall natural resource extraction, and we are emphasizing both the environmental side, which is my background as an ecological economist, as well as the cultural heritage aspects, including the social aspects. I would define this coming together really as a nexus issue. One, circular economy is aspirational and it's a universal goal of sustainability, but from several different strategies for sustainability. It's not sustainability in itself, that's for sure. And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And also, cultural heritage adaptive reuse aligns well because of, for example, the embodied energy and CO2 in old buildings, the durability of old buildings, maintaining materials in the social life and the economy of human provision without extracting new materials. And yes, it essentially reducing the material demand uh, for new buildings and opportunities to retrofit uh, the energy and efficiency measures. So, why is this important? Why do these things come together? The environmental impact of buildings is um, rather huge. Half of all energy use, 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions, and half of all raw material extraction, and a third, roughly, of all water use is for building construction and use. This is from a life cycle perspective. Okay. Yes, I would say it's a nexus issue because it's transdisciplinary, as all other speakers have said, complex, and we have this uh, several variables with interactive feedback loops. And I would really focus that this requires a social, ecological, economic perspective. A social perspective is not enough. Uh, a quantitative, monetized economic perspective isn't enough as well. So, one of the things that we've recently found is that although the CE concept in Europe today has been challenged in the literature, both as too narrowly defined, and I would also add it has many different definitions, so it's widely defined and narrowly defined. Uh, it is increasingly adopted in European politics and policy as a sustainability strategy, and that is without due consideration of the non-environmental aspects. I focus on the environmental aspects, but within the project that I told you about, CLIck, our colleagues are focusing on the social sustainability aspects. And in that, I found the concept of language and the social sustainability um, discussion very interesting this morning. So, I am not getting a change. Okay, there we are. So, the political framing of CE as sustainability has real criticisms, and here we are. We've got the co-optation by financial interests because of the value mechanism. That it could be cornucopian, that you can just continue to use materials and energy again and again and again, which is um, misguided. I say it could be considered a window dressing for business as usual, some would say, and a focus only on recycling, and some would say that it's an empty promise of decoupling consumption from economic growth. Empty because of the previously mentioned uh, criteria there or criticisms. So, despite that, it has moved apace at the European level, and I'm focusing everything that I've just discussed really at just the European level. So the transition to a more circular economy, where the value of products, materials, and resources is maintained in the economy for as long as possible, and the generation of waste minimized, an essential contribution to the EU's efforts to develop a sustainable, low carbon, resource efficient, and competitive economy. So here, this was the 2015 Circular Economy Action Plan, which was the first macro level focus on the circular economy for the European Union and the European Commission. And once again, it's really quite focused on just not only resource efficient, but specifically competitive economy. And now, the latest happenings, 2019, was the Green New Deal, which called for a circular economy inspired wave of renovation of existing buildings. And as you know, in most European centers and in most city centers, there are significant cultural heritage buildings that are part of the existing building stock and beyond the city centers as well, certainly. Okay, the 2020, most recently, this is in March, there was the new CE action plan, which reiterated the strategy for renovating existing buildings and announced the strategy for a sustainable built environment. So once again, CE has been equated with sustainability, although, as I mentioned, the social aspects are not part of that. And why would that be? Let's just go. Why is that really? It's really because they're, the roots of circular economy started in industrial ecology, and the concept was to develop new value streams from unused materials or materials that could be fed back into the production chain. So it really was focused on the environment, and now still at the macro level, it still is. So if particularly for cultural heritage, you need to also focus on uh, on cultural heritage. I think as several of the panelists mentioned, that's part of sustainability issues. Many topics cross over with cultural heritage studies as it is. We have a forthcoming article which is called The Future of Circular Environmental Impact Indicators for Cultural Heritage Buildings in Europe. Myself and my two co-authors, Heike Kreinen and Sigrid Stagel. And in this article, what we're taking a look at is what was the situation before for cultural heritage buildings, adaptive reuse of cultural heritage buildings, art at the micro level and the macro level, and which indicators fit into existing regimes and in future regimes. So, uh, life cycle analysis based international standards, the EU environmental impact analysis guidance, and the green building certifications without circularity were all standard in some senses and cover mostly everything to do with cultural heritage buildings as well as existing buildings. Then, and in fact, they specifically mention cultural heritage in both the environmental impact analysis and the life cycle analysis guidance. And then there's some new things happening. And so, for example, the green building certifications, in this case, we use BREEAM as a bellwether, has already developed a circular framework which is being tested in the Netherlands, and I would expect this to continue. And then there's a new program at the EU level called Levels, which is now in its uh, well, the planning and testing phase. It has been uh, completed, and now they are have reviewed the comments, and now it hasn't been fully released, so it's sort of in the next step of the planning phase. And that's at the micro level. So if you had a cultural heritage building, uh, one or many in an area, you would be applying these types of micro level. At the macro level, there are some other environmental regimes, which are the Resource Efficiency Scoreboard, the CE indicators, and the EU Energy Union indicators. And these indicators, all within each of these, um, sometimes cover what we would say you would need to uh, capture the environmental impacts of cultural heritage, and then there are some missing gaps. So in the paper, we address the gaps and give a framework. But just to give a quick example, this is the environmental circularity indicators at the EU level. And you can see here on the right side, one of the elements we have here is construction and demolition waste. And on the bottom left, we have specific materials and raw materials and secondary raw materials, which is collection and reuse. And then above, this is the municipal waste amount, which is also affected by construction and demolition. And I am done. I believe in time.
Thank you so much, Gillian. That was actually really interesting. I'm quite into circular economy.